My name is Delilah Winters, and I'm 77 years old. I spent 38 years as a city planner, designing neighborhoods, reviewing development proposals, and understanding property rights and zoning laws. I retired with $610,000 in savings, a paid-off house worth $485,000, and a deep respect for boundaries, both physical and personal. I raised my son Julian alone after my husband died when Julian was 8 years old. I gave him everything: private schools, college tuition, help starting his business, unconditional love and support. I thought we had a relationship built on mutual respect. Which is why what happened 3 months ago in my own dining room left me feeling like I'd lost control of my entire life in a single evening. It started with what seemed like a normal family dinner. Julian called and asked if he could bring his wife Raina and their 2 kids over on Sunday. "We want to talk to you about something important, Mom. Family stuff." I made a nice meal: roasted chicken, vegetables, homemade rolls. We sat around my dining room table, and after we ate, Julian cleared his throat in that way that signals something serious is coming. "Mom, Raina and I have been talking. We think it's time to make some changes. Big changes that affect all of us." "What kind of changes?" "Well, you're 77 now. This house is getting to be too much for you to manage alone. And with the kids growing up, they need more space. Our house is getting cramped. So we've been thinking about solutions that would work for everyone." "Solutions?" "We think we should all move in together. Here, you have 4 bedrooms, plenty of space. We could turn the garage into an extra room for the kids. Mom, it makes sense. We'd be here to help you, the kids would have their grandmother close, and we'd save money not paying our mortgage." I was surprised but tried to process it calmly. "Julian, that's a big decision. I need time to think about." "Actually, we've already started making plans," Raina interrupted. "We talked to a contractor about the garage conversion. We've been looking at furniture layouts for how we'd arrange the bedrooms. Julian's been researching how to set up a shared household budget. We wanted to present you with a complete plan so you could see how well it would work." That's when I realized this wasn't a proposal. This wasn't them asking my permission. They'd already decided. They were just informing me. "Wait, you've talked to contractors about my garage. You've made plans for my bedrooms, without asking me first." "We didn't want to worry you with details until we had everything figured out," Julian said. "But Mom, we've thought this through. It's the best solution for everyone. We can move in next month. We've already given notice at our rental house." My home became a group decision overnight. Decisions about my garage, my bedrooms, my space, my life, all made without my input, without my consent, without anyone asking if this was what I wanted. "You gave notice at your rental house, before even talking to me about this." "Because we knew you'd say yes once you saw how much sense it makes," Raina said with a smile, like this was all perfectly reasonable. "You're getting older, you need family around, and we need more space. It's perfect." "What if I don't want you to move in?" Julian laughed, actually laughed like I'd made a joke. "Mom, don't be silly. Of course you want us here. You're just surprised. Once you get used to the idea, you'll see how great this will be." But I wasn't being silly, and I wasn't surprised. I was shocked, angry, and suddenly aware that my son and daughter-in-law had made plans for my home, my life, and my future without considering that I might have my own opinions about it. My home became a group decision overnight. And sitting at that dining room table, listening to them discuss room assignments and furniture arrangements like it was already settled, I realized I needed to understand exactly what had happened and how to take back control of my own life. But before I tell you how a city planner who spent 38 years defending property rights fought to reclaim her own home from family members who thought they could just move in without permission, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Click it now. Then smash that like button, because this story is going to show you that being elderly doesn't mean losing the right to make decisions about your own home. Turn on those notifications, that bell icon, because you need to hear what happened when my family treated my house like community property, and how I used every skill I'd learned in city planning to defend my boundaries. and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. What city? What state? What country? I want to know who's here with me today. Because what I discovered when my home became a group decision, about my family's real motivations and how they plan to take over my life, it's going to shock you. And it taught me that sometimes the people who claim to be helping you are actually helping themselves. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you about my relationship with Julian, about my career defending people's property rights, and about how a single dinner conversation revealed that my son thought he could make decisions about my home without my consent. To understand what happened, you need to understand my career and why property rights matter so much to me. I became a city planner because I believed in order, fairness, and people's right to control their own property. I started working for the city planning department when I was 26 years old, fresh out of graduate school with a master's degree in urban planning. For 38 years, I reviewed development proposals, enforced zoning laws, and helped resolve property disputes. A huge part of my job was protecting homeowners' rights, making sure developers couldn't bulldoze neighborhoods without proper process, ensuring people had say in what happened in their communities, defending the principle that property owners get to make decisions about their own land. I'd seen every kind of property dispute: neighbors who wanted to dictate what color someone painted their house, family members who thought they had rights to property that wasn't theirs, people who assumed that wanting something gave them the right to take it. And I'd learned one fundamental principle: ownership matters. The person whose name is on the deed gets to make the decisions, not their neighbors, not their family, not the people who think they know better. The owner. I never imagined I'd need to apply that principle to my own family. I raised Julian alone. My husband Marcus died when Julian was 8, a construction accident, sudden and devastating. I was left with an 8-year-old son, a modest life insurance payout, and a job that required long hours and intense focus. I worked hard to give Julian stability. We had routines, clear expectations, consistent rules. I made sure he had everything he needed: good schools, extracurricular activities, college preparation. Julian was a good kid, smart, responsible, ambitious. He went to college for business administration, graduated with honors, and started his own consulting company helping small businesses with operations and efficiency. He married Raina 6 years ago. She worked in marketing. They seemed financially stable: nice rental house, new cars, regular vacations. They had 2 kids, Emma 9 and Jaden 6. Julian and I stayed close. Weekly phone calls, monthly dinners. He seemed like an attentive, caring son. But over the past year, I'd started noticing something. Julian had become very interested in my house and my finances. "Mom, how's the house holding up? Any major repairs needed?" "Everything's fine. I keep up with maintenance." "But at your age, isn't it getting hard to manage everything?" "I'm 77, not 97. I manage just fine." "What about the property taxes? Are they getting expensive?" "I budget for them." "Julian, why are you asking all these questions?" "Just concerned about you, Mom, wanting to make sure you're not overwhelmed." But it felt like more than concern. It felt like assessment, like he was cataloging my house's value and my ability to maintain it. Raina also started making comments during their visits. "This house is so big. Don't you get lonely in all this space?" "I like my space. I've lived here for 35 years. But 4 bedrooms for one person seems wasteful. You could downsize and have so much less to worry about." "I don't want to downsize. I like my house." "Well, it's something to think about for the future." I didn't think much of these comments at the time. Just family making conversation, I thought. Then, about 4 months ago, Julian asked me a strange question. "Mom, if something happened to you, if you got sick or couldn't manage on your own, would you want to move in with us, or would you want us to move in with you?" "Nothing's happening to me. I'm healthy." "I know, but hypothetically, which would you prefer?" "Julian, I'm not planning for hypothetical scenarios. I'm planning to continue living in my own house independently." "But if you had to choose?" I'm not choosing because it's not relevant. Julian, why are you asking this? Just thinking ahead, planning for possibilities. Now I realize he was planting seeds, getting me used to the idea that someday I might need to share my house or give up independence, preparing the ground for what came 3 months ago. That Sunday dinner, when they announced their plan. We think we should all move in together, here. The shock must have shown on my face because Julian immediately started explaining, talking faster, like if he could just get all the reasons out, I'd have to agree. Mom, think about it practically. You have 4 bedrooms, one for you, one for Raina and me, one for Emma, one for Jaden. We convert the garage into a playroom or office. We share expenses, utilities, groceries, property taxes. You'd have help with maintenance, yard work, everything that's getting harder for you. The kids would have their grandmother every day instead of just visits. We'd save the $2,400 we're paying in rent every month. It's perfect. Everyone wins. Except I didn't agree to any of this. Because we wanted to present you with a complete plan, Raina said. We knew if we came with half-baked ideas, you'd worry about the details. So we figured everything out first. You talked to contractors about converting my garage. Just preliminary conversations, Julian said. Getting estimates, we haven't committed to anything yet. You've made furniture layouts for my bedrooms. Just planning, Mom, seeing how it would work. You gave notice at your rental house. There was a pause. Then Julian said, We had to. Our lease is up next month and the landlord wanted to know if we were renewing. We told him no because we're moving here. Without asking me first. Because we knew you'd say yes. Mom, why wouldn't you want us here? You'd have family around, help when you need it, grandkids to keep you young. This is a good thing. It might be a good thing if I'd been part of the decision, but you made plans for my house without including me. Julian, this is my home. I get to decide who lives here. Raina jumped in. Of course it's your home. That's not changing. We're just sharing it, making better use of the space. You'll still have your bedroom, your bathroom, your routines. We'll just all be living together. What about my study, my craft room, my guest room for when my sister visits? Well, those rooms would become the kids' bedrooms. But you don't really need a whole room for crafts. You could do that in the dining room or the living room. And your sister can stay at a hotel when she visits. Mom, you have to make some compromises when you're living with family. I don't have to make any compromises because this is my house. Julian's voice took on a tone I didn't like, patient, like he was explaining something to a child who didn't understand. Mom, you're being unreasonable. We're offering to help you, to be here for you, to make your life easier. And you're acting like we're trying to steal something from you. You're trying to move into my house without my permission. How is that not stealing? Because we're family, this isn't stealing, it's sharing. Mom, I'm your son. Those are your grandchildren. We have a right to expect that you'd want to help us, especially when it doesn't cost you anything. It costs me my independence, my privacy, my control over my own space. You're 77 years old. How much independence do you really need? Mom, at some point you have to accept that you need family around. And we're trying to be here for you before you decline to the point where you have no choice. That word, decline, like it was inevitable, like being 77 meant I was incompetent. I'm not declining. I'm completely capable of managing my own life and my own home. For now, Raina said quietly. But Julian's right. At some point you'll need help. Wouldn't you rather have us move in now while you can still adjust instead of waiting until you're in crisis? I'm not in crisis, and I'm not agreeing to this. Julian and Raina exchanged a look. Then Julian said, Mom, we've already given notice at our rental. We have to be out in 30 days. We don't have time to find another place that quickly. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem. You made that decision without consulting me. So you'd let your son and his family be homeless rather than share your big house that you don't even use half of. You're not going to be homeless. You're going to find another rental and make better financial decisions that don't involve taking over someone else's home without permission. Julian stood up, angry now. This is unbelievable. We come to you with a solution that helps everyone, and you're being selfish and stubborn. Mom, Raina, and I have been struggling financially. We can barely afford our rent. We need help. And you have the resources to help us, this house. But you won't because you'd rather live alone in 4 bedrooms you don't use than let your family have stability. If you're struggling financially, there are solutions. Budgeting, downsizing to a cheaper rental, increasing your income. Julian, what there isn't a solution for is moving into someone else's house without their consent and calling it sharing. Raina was crying now. I can't believe you'd turn away your own grandchildren. Emma and Jaden need stability. They need a grandmother who cares about them. But you care more about having an empty craft room than about your own family. This isn't about the craft room. It's about respect. It's about you making decisions about my property without including me. Raina, if Julian had come to me months ago and said, Mom, we're struggling financially. Would you consider letting us move in temporarily while we get back on our feet? I might have said yes, with clear boundaries and expectations. But that's not what you did. You made plans, talked to contractors, gave notice at your rental, and then informed me of the decision you'd already made. That's not asking for help. That's taking control. We didn't want to burden you with worrying about our problems, Julian said. So instead you burdened me with a decision I had no part in making. Julian, I'm a city planner. I spent 38 years defending property rights. Do you know how many times I saw situations like this? Family members who thought they had rights to property that wasn't theirs. People who made plans for other people's homes without permission. I enforced the law against those people. And now my own son is doing the exact same thing. Julian grabbed his keys. Fine, we'll figure something out. But Mom, don't expect us to keep visiting regularly or bringing the kids around if you're going to choose your empty house over your family. They left, and I sat at my dining room table, looking at the dishes from the meal I'd cooked, and I realized my home had become a group decision overnight. Julian and Raina had decided, without me, that they were moving in. They'd made plans for my garage, my bedrooms, my space. They'd given notice at their rental, counting on the fact that I wouldn't say no once they'd put themselves in a desperate situation. My home became a group decision overnight, and I needed to understand how this had happened and how to make absolutely clear that decisions about my property were mine and mine alone to make. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The morning after that disastrous dinner, I woke up early with my mind racing. I made coffee and sat in my study, the room Raina had so casually suggested I give up, and I thought about what had happened. Julian and Raina had made plans for my home without my input. They'd talked to contractors. They'd created furniture layouts. They'd given notice at their rental, all based on the assumption that I'd agree once presented with their complete plan. But there was something else bothering me, something Julian had said. We've been struggling financially. We can barely afford our rent. Julian made good money with his consulting business. Raina had a solid marketing job. How were they struggling to afford a $2,400 rent? I spent that morning doing what I'd done hundreds of times in my career as a city planner, research. When someone came to us with a development proposal, we didn't just accept their claims at face value. We investigated. We verified. We looked for the whole story. I started with social media. Julian and Raina's profiles were full of photos from the past year. A week-long vacation in Hawaii. A new boat, a nice one, not a cheap one. Expensive restaurant meals. New furniture. Designer clothes for the kids. These weren't people who were barely affording rent. These were people who were spending beyond their means and then claiming financial struggle. I also did something I felt slightly uncomfortable about, but my years in city planning had taught me that understanding someone's true situation requires looking at evidence, not just listening to claims. I had access to some public records databases through my former position, access that hadn't been revoked after I retired. I looked up Julian and Raina's financial filings. They'd taken out a home equity loan last year against Julian's business. $75,000. Where had that money gone? Based on their social media, A lot of it went to vacations, the boat, and lifestyle expenses. They had significant credit card debt. I could see from collection notices that had become public record. Over $60,000 across multiple cards. Julian's business had been struggling. Revenue was down significantly from previous years. So the financial struggle was real, but it was self-inflicted. They'd overspent, made poor financial choices, and now they were looking at my house as the solution to problems they'd created. That afternoon, Julian called. His voice was strained, less angry than the night before, but still tense. "Mom, I'm sorry about how things got heated last night, but I need you to understand our situation. We're really struggling. I didn't want to burden you with the details, but we're in serious financial trouble. We can't afford another rental. We need to move in with you. It's not just a convenience, it's necessary." "Julian, I saw the photos from your Hawaii trip last month. The boat you bought, the expensive restaurants. If you're in financial trouble, it's because of choices you made." Mom, have you been investigating us?" "I spent 38 years investigating claims people made about property and development. Yes, I researched your situation. And what I found is that you've been spending money you don't have, and now you want to solve that problem by moving into my house rent-free." "We weren't going to live here rent-free. We were planning to contribute." "How much?" "We'd pay utilities and buy groceries." "That's not rent. That's basic household expenses you'd have anywhere. Julian, market rent for a 4-bedroom house in this neighborhood is about $3,500 a month. Were you planning to pay me $3,500? Silence. Or were you planning to contribute maybe $500 or $600 and call it helping with expenses, while saving the remaining $2,900 per month? Mom, we're family. This shouldn't be about money. It's absolutely about money. You're in debt because of your spending choices. You see my house as a way to live for free while you pay off debt you created. And you made plans to move in without asking me because you knew I'd ask exactly these questions. So what are we supposed to do? We gave notice at our rental. Find another rental you can actually afford. Cut your expenses. Sell the boat. Stop eating at expensive restaurants. Make a budget and stick to it. Julian, these are your problems to solve, not mine. But you could help us. You have this big house. Having resources doesn't mean I'm obligated to let you use them, especially when you created your problems through irresponsible choices. Julian, if you were genuinely in trouble through no fault of your own, if you'd lost your job unexpectedly, or had medical bills, or faced circumstances you couldn't control, I'd help. But you're in trouble because you bought a boat and took expensive vacations you couldn't afford. That's not my responsibility to fix. You're really not going to let us move in. Not without a completely different conversation. If you want to come to me honestly and say, we made financial mistakes and we need help getting back on track. If you want to discuss a temporary arrangement with clear boundaries, expectations, and contributions, I'll listen. But I'm not agreeing to have you move in based on plans you made without me. Julian hung up, and I sat there feeling both relieved that I'd stood my ground and worried about what would come next. What came next, 3 days later, was worse than I'd expected. I came home from grocery shopping to find a contractor's truck in my driveway. A man was measuring my garage, taking notes, looking at the structure. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" He looked up, friendly and professional. "Hi, I'm Derek Chen from Riverside Construction. I'm here to give an estimate for the garage conversion project. Your son said you'd be expecting me." "I'm not expecting you. I didn't authorize any garage conversion." Derek looked confused. "Oh, your son Julian called last week. He said you wanted to convert the garage into a bedroom and playroom. He gave me the address and asked for a detailed estimate. He said you'd approved the project and just needed pricing." "I haven't approved anything. Julian doesn't have authority to make decisions about my property." "I'm sorry, there must be a miscommunication. Julian was very clear that you wanted this done. He even gave me specifications for what you wanted. Interior walls, electrical upgrades, flooring, the works." "Julian lied to you. This is my house. I'm the only one who can authorize work on it, and I'm not authorizing this project. Derek looked embarrassed. Ma'am, I apologize. I should have verified directly with you. In my defense, Julian presented this as a done deal. He even asked about scheduling and how quickly we could start after you gave final approval. I didn't realize there was any question about whether the project was happening. After Derek left, I called Julian immediately. You sent a contractor to my house. Without my permission. Julian, that's trespassing. I was just getting estimates, Mom. We need to know how much the conversion would cost. There is no conversion. I told you no. How many times do I have to say it? I thought once you cooled down, you'd reconsider. I was trying to move things forward. You were trying to force my hand. You thought if you got estimates, started the process, acted like it was happening, I'd eventually give in. Julian, that's manipulation. It's not manipulation. It's planning ahead. Mom, we move out of our rental in 3 weeks. We need to finalize these plans now. There are no plans to finalize because I'm not agreeing to this. Julian, find another place to live. There's no time. We can't find a decent rental in 3 weeks. You should have thought of that before you gave notice without securing alternative housing. You're being unreasonable and selfish. This is your fault. If you just agreed to let us move in like any normal grandmother would, we wouldn't be in this situation. I'm not responsible for your housing crisis. You created it by making assumptions about my property. Julian, stop sending people to my house. Stop making plans that involve my home, and accept that I'm not changing my mind. I hung up, shaking with anger and something close to fear. Julian wasn't accepting no for an answer. He was continuing to act as if my agreement was inevitable, just delayed. Over the next week, things escalated in ways I didn't anticipate. Raina called, crying. Please, can we just talk? The kids are so upset. They were so excited about living with Grandma, and now they're heartbroken. Emma keeps asking why you don't want them. How do I explain to a 9-year-old that her grandmother cares more about an empty house than about her? Raina, don't manipulate me through the children. This has nothing to do with me not wanting them. It has everything to do with that. You're choosing to live alone rather than let your family be close to you. Emma cried herself to sleep last night because she doesn't understand why Grandma doesn't love her enough to let them live with her. Then tell Emma the truth, that her parents made plans without asking me and I'm enforcing my right to make decisions about my own home. She's 9. She can't understand that. All she understands is rejection. Raina, using your children's emotions to guilt me into something I didn't agree to is wrong. Don't do it. But she kept doing it. Over the next several days, I received text messages with photos of Emma crying, of Jaden looking sad, with captions like, "This is what you're doing to them, and they just want to be close to Grandma." Julian tried a different approach. He started telling family members and friends that I was refusing to help them in their time of need. My sister Opal called. Delilah, Julian told me you won't let them move in with you. He said they're about to be homeless and you're refusing to help. Is that true? It's more complicated than that. Julian and Raina gave notice at their rental without asking me first if they could move in. They made plans for my house, talked to contractors, designed room layouts, all without my input. When they finally told me about their plans, it was presented as a done deal, not a request. But they're family. Can't you work something out? Not when they're treating my home like it's community property they have a right to. Opal, Julian makes good money, but they've been spending beyond their means. They took expensive vacations, bought a boat, ate at costly restaurants. Now they're in debt and they see my house as a free solution to their self-created problems. Still, they're your son and grandchildren. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters, but it doesn't mean I lose the right to make decisions about my own property. Opal, I spent 38 years as a city planner defending people's property rights. I'm not going to give up my own rights just because the people trying to take control are family. But not everyone was as understanding. Some family members sided with Julian. He's your son, you should help him. Family takes care of family. At your age, wouldn't it be nice to have people around? Julian's narrative was spreading. Elderly grandmother refuses to help struggling son and innocent grandchildren. My narrative, that Julian made plans without my permission, and I'm defending my property rights, sounded less sympathetic to people who didn't understand the full situation. 2 weeks before Julian and Raina had to move out of their rental, something happened that showed me just how far they were willing to go. I received a call from a woman named Sandra Phillips, who identified herself as a senior care advocate. Mrs. Winters, I received a concerning call from your son. He's worried about your ability to live independently. He mentioned you're making some decisions that concern him, refusing help from family, becoming isolated, showing signs of declining judgment. He asked if I could come do a welfare check. Ms. Phillips, I'm completely fine. I live independently without any difficulty. My son is concerned because I won't let him move into my house without my permission. He's trying to paint my boundary setting as incompetence. Well, these situations can be complicated. Sometimes family members do notice things before the individual realizes there's a problem. I'm not the one with a problem. My son gave notice at his rental house before asking if he could move in with me. When I said no, he started claiming I'm declining mentally. Ms. Phillips, I was a city planner for 38 years. I retired 3 years ago in perfect health. I manage my finances, my home, and my life without difficulty. My son is lying to you because he wants to move in with me and I've refused. I see. Well, I appreciate you clarifying. Mr. Winters was quite convincing when he called, very concerned, very detailed about his worries. But if you're saying you're managing well, I'll note that in my file. Can I ask, what exactly did Julian tell you? He said you're forgetting things, making poor decisions, refusing help you clearly need. He said he's tried to help you, but you've become paranoid and accused him of trying to steal your house. He was worried you might be experiencing early dementia. I felt cold anger. Julian was now actively trying to have me declared incompetent because I wouldn't let him take over my house. Ms. Phillips, everything Julian told you is false. I can provide medical records showing I'm in excellent cognitive health. My son is attempting elder abuse, specifically financial exploitation through trying to move into my house without permission. When I refused, he's now attacking my competence. After Sandra Phillips hung up, sounding uncertain about who to believe, I called my doctor and scheduled a comprehensive evaluation. If Julian was going to claim I was declining, I needed documentation proving otherwise. I also called a lawyer. Her name was Victoria Hammond, and she specialized in elder law and property rights. Ms. Hammond, my son is trying to move into my house without my permission. When I refused, he started claiming I'm mentally incompetent. He's sent contractors to my house without authorization. He's spreading false information to family members. And now he's called a senior care advocate suggesting I need a competency evaluation. I need legal protection. Victoria listened carefully. Mrs. Winters, what your son is doing has a legal name. It's called financial exploitation and possible elder abuse. He's attempting to gain control of your property against your will and attacking your competence when you resist. We need to document everything and take protective action. Over the next week, I did exactly that. I got a comprehensive medical and cognitive evaluation showing I was in excellent health with no signs of decline. I documented every interaction with Julian, the unauthorized contractor visit, the manipulative texts with photos of the crying children, the false report to the senior care advocate. I photographed my well-maintained home showing I was managing everything competently. And I did one more thing. I sent Julian a letter on legal letterhead from Victoria Hammond's office. Mr. Winters, I represent your mother, Delilah Winters, regarding your repeated attempts to move into her home without her consent and your subsequent actions when she refused. Please be advised. 1. Mrs. Winters has not granted permission for you or your family to move into her home. Any attempt to do so will be considered trespassing. 2. You do not have authority to hire contractors or make modifications to Mrs. Winters's property. Any future unauthorized contractor visits will be reported to police. 3. Your claims that Mrs. Winters is experiencing cognitive decline or incompetence are false and defamatory. Mrs. Winters has comprehensive medical documentation showing excellent mental and physical health. 4. Your attempt to involve senior care advocates by making false claims about your mother's competence constitutes elder abuse under state law. 5. If you continue making false claims about Mrs. Winters's competence or attempting to gain unauthorized access to her property, she will pursue legal action including restraining orders and reports to Adult Protective Services for attempted financial exploitation. Mrs. Winters is willing to have a respectful conversation with you about your housing situation, but only if you acknowledge you made plans without her permission, b. stop making false claims about her competence, and c. approach her honestly rather than manipulatively. Otherwise, all contact must cease. Sincerely, Victoria Hammond, attorney at law. My home became a group decision overnight when Julian and Raina made plans without my input. But I was taking back control, not through anger or family drama, but through the same tools I'd used in my career: documentation, legal protection, and the unwavering defense of property rights. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The day after Julian received the legal letter from Victoria Hammond, my phone rang at 7:00 a.m. It was Julian, and he was furious. "You sent me a letter from a lawyer. Mom, I'm your son. You're threatening me with restraining orders and reports to authorities. How could you do this? How could you hire contractors to work on my house without my permission? How could you call a senior care advocate and lie about my mental state? Julian, every action in that letter is a response to something you did first. I'm trying to help you, and you're treating me like a criminal. You're not trying to help me. You're trying to take control of my house. There's a difference. Julian, did you read the part where the letter said I'm willing to have a respectful conversation if you approach honestly? I have been honest." "No, you haven't. You made plans for my house without asking me. You gave notice at your rental before securing my agreement. You hired contractors without my authorization. You told family I'm refusing to help you without mentioning that you never actually asked. You just informed me of plans you'd already made. Julian, none of that is honest. Because I knew if I asked, you'd say no. And that gives you the right to just do it anyway. Julian, that's not how property rights work. That's not how consent works. That's not how family relationships should work. We have 1 week before we have to be out of our rental. 1 week, Mom. Where are we supposed to go? Have you been looking for another place?" Silence. "Julian, have you spent the past 3 weeks searching for a rental, or have you spent them trying to manipulate me into letting you move in?" "We looked at a few places. And nothing suitable. Everything's too expensive or too small, or in bad areas." "What's your budget?" "We can't afford more than $1,800 a month." "Then find something for $1,800. It won't be as nice as what you want, but it'll be what you can actually afford. Julian, this is called living within your means." Easy for you to say. You own your house outright. You have savings. You don't understand what it's like to struggle. I understand exactly what it's like. When your father died, I was 35 years old with an 8-year-old child, a mortgage, and a modest life insurance payout. I struggled, but I didn't demand that someone else solve my problems. I worked, I budgeted, I made difficult choices. That's what adults do. So you're just going to let us be homeless? You're not going to be homeless. You're going to find housing you can afford. And Julian, if you actually come to me honestly, acknowledge the manipulations, apologize for the lies, and ask for help with a specific, temporary arrangement with clear boundaries, I might consider it. But as long as you're trying to force your way in and attacking my competence when I resist, the answer is no. Julian hung up on me, and I sat there wondering if I was being too harsh. But then I remembered the contractor showing up at my house, the calls to senior care advocates, The photos of crying children sent to manipulate me. The family members told I was refusing to help without being told the full story. Julian wasn't asking for help. He was waging a campaign to take control of my home. That afternoon, something happened that confirmed my decision to stand firm. My neighbor, Margaret Chen, came over. "Delilah, I need to tell you something. Yesterday, a man came to my door asking questions about you. He said he was concerned about your welfare and wanted to know if I'd noticed any signs that you were struggling, forgetting things, not maintaining your house, seeming confused." What did this man look like? 40s, professional looking. He didn't give me his name, but he asked very specific questions. Had I seen you forget to bring in your trash cans? Did your lawn look overgrown? Had I noticed any decline in your appearance or behavior? It felt like he was fishing for negative things to say about you. What did you tell him? I told him you're the most organized, capable person on this block, that your house is always well maintained, your lawn is perfect, and I've never seen any sign of cognitive problems. He seemed disappointed by my answers. "Delilah, what's going on?" I explained the situation. Julian trying to move in, my refusal, his claims that I'm declining. Margaret was shocked. "Your own son is sending people to gather evidence against you. That's awful." "It's also illegal. He's building a false case to try to have me declared incompetent so he can gain control of my property." Over the next 2 days, I learned that Julian had contacted 3 other neighbors with similar questions. Most told him I was obviously competent and managing fine. But one neighbor, an elderly man who didn't know me well, had said, "Well, she is getting up there in age. I suppose she could be having problems." Julian would probably use that vague statement as evidence if he tried to pursue any legal action against me. I documented everything. I contacted each neighbor Julian had spoken to and got written statements about what he'd asked and what they'd answered. I added it all to the file Victoria Hammond was building. 5 days before Julian had to move out of his rental, Raina showed up at my door with Emma and Jaden. The children had clearly been crying. "Mom, Delilah, please can we come in? We need to talk." I let them in, uncomfortable with whatever was coming. Raina sat the children on my couch, then turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Emma, Jaden, tell Grandma what you told me this morning." Emma, sobbing, said, "Grandma, why don't you want us to live with you? Don't you love us?" Jaden, only 6, added, "Mommy said we might have to live in our car because Grandma won't share her house." I felt sick. Raina was using the children as weapons, coaching them to say things designed to manipulate me. "Emma, Jaden, I love you both very much. This situation isn't about me not wanting you." "Then why won't you let us live here?" Emma asked. "We promise we'll be good, we'll keep our rooms clean, we won't be loud. Please, Grandma." I looked at Raina. "This is wrong. Using the children this way is wrong." "I'm not using them. They genuinely don't understand why their grandmother is turning them away. Emma, sweetie, tell Grandma how you feel." "I feel like you don't love us, like we're not important to you." I knelt down to Emma's level. "Sweetheart, I love you so much, but this situation is complicated. Your parents made plans without asking me first." "Because we thought you'd say yes," Emma said, clearly repeating something she'd heard her parents say. "Grandma, we're family. Family helps each other." Raina jumped in. "See, even Emma understands. We're family, you have space, we need help, this should be simple." "Raina, take the children and leave. Now." "So you're throwing out your grandchildren. You're actually going to." "I'm asking you to stop using your children to manipulate me. Emma, Jaden, I love you. This has nothing to do with not loving you. Adults are dealing with adult situations, and it's not fair for your parents to put this on you." After they left, Emma still crying, Jaden looking confused, I called Victoria Hammond. They brought the children to my house to guilt me. The kids have obviously been told that Grandma is choosing not to help them and they might end up homeless. "Victoria, is there anything I can do to protect myself from this kind of emotional manipulation?" "Document it. Write down exactly what happened, what was said, how the children were used. If Julian and Raina pursue any legal action, guardianship, conservatorship, anything, this evidence shows they're willing to manipulate children and use emotional coercion. It undermines their credibility. I feel terrible. Those kids are genuinely upset and it's not their fault. No, it's their parents' fault for creating this situation and then using the children's emotions as leverage. Delilah, you're doing the right thing. Don't let guilt override your boundaries. That evening, I received a text from Julian. Fine, you win. We found a place. A terrible apartment in a bad neighborhood, but it's all we can afford now. I hope you're happy knowing your grandchildren will be living somewhere unsafe because you wouldn't share your big house. This is on you. I wanted to feel relieved, but I also felt manipulated. One more attempt to make me feel guilty and responsible for choices Julian and Raina had made. I responded, I'm glad you found housing. The neighborhood and condition of that housing is a result of your financial choices and your decision to give notice at your previous rental without securing my agreement first. I hope you'll make better decisions going forward. He didn't respond. 2 days before they were supposed to move into their new apartment, I received a phone call that shocked me. It was from Adult Protective Services. A woman named Patricia Morneau explained that they'd received a report claiming I was living in unsafe conditions, possibly experiencing self-neglect, and making poor decisions about my welfare. Mrs. Winters, we're required to investigate all reports. Would it be possible for me to visit your home to verify your living conditions? Of course. When would you like to come? Would this afternoon work? When Patricia Morneau arrived, I showed her my clean, well-organized home. Every room was neat, well-maintained, and clearly the home of someone managing their life competently. Mrs. Winters, I see no evidence of unsafe conditions or self-neglect. Your home is immaculate. Can you tell me about your daily routine? I described my life, my activities, my social connections, my management of household tasks and finances. Patricia took notes, then said gently, Mrs. Winters, can I ask, do you have any idea who might have filed this report? My son Julian. I refused to let him move into my house without my permission. When I held firm on that boundary, he started claiming I'm mentally declining and making poor decisions. This APS report is part of his campaign to paint me as incompetent. I see. Well, I can tell you that this report is clearly false. You're obviously competent and managing your life well. I'll be closing this case as unfounded. Mrs. Winters, I'm also noting in my report that this complaint appears to have been made in bad faith. If your son continues making false reports, there could be consequences for him. Can I get a copy of that report? Absolutely. You should have documentation that this investigation found no merit. After Patricia left, I called Victoria Hammond with the update. Julian filed a false APS report. The investigator confirmed I'm fine and noted the report was bad faith. What does this mean legally? It strengthens your case significantly. Filing false reports to government agencies is serious. If Julian tries to pursue guardianship or conservatorship, we now have evidence that he's willing to make fraudulent claims. Delilah, you're building a strong file showing that you're competent and that Julian's claims are motivated by wanting access to your property, not genuine concern. That evening, I did something I'd been considering for days. I sent an email to extended family members, my sister Opal, my cousins, family friends who'd known me for years. Subject: the full story about my situation with Julian. I explained everything. Julian's plan to move in without asking first. The contractors sent without my permission. The false claims about my mental state. The APS report that was investigated and found baseless. The children brought to my house to manipulate me emotionally. I attached documentation, the letter from Victoria Hammond, the APS report closing the case as unfounded, statements from neighbors Julian had questioned, my medical evaluations showing excellent health. I ended the email. I'm sharing this because Julian has been telling people that I'm refusing to help him in his time of need. The truth is more complicated. Julian made plans for my house without my permission, then tried to manipulate and coerce me into agreeing when I said no. When that didn't work, he started attacking my competence. I love my son and my grandchildren. But I won't give up my right to make decisions about my own property, and I won't accept being manipulated or having false claims made about my mental state. I hope you understand. The responses started coming within hours. Opal called, apologetic. Delilah, I'm so sorry I didn't understand the full situation. Julian made it sound like you were just being stubborn. I didn't realize he'd made all those plans without asking you first. My cousin Raymond wrote, this is elder abuse. Julian is attempting financial exploitation. Delilah, you're absolutely right to protect yourself. But not everyone was supportive. Julian's aunt, his father's sister, wrote, family should support family. I'm disappointed that you're choosing property over people. Those children need stability and you have the resources to provide it. I didn't engage with the negative responses. I told my truth, provided evidence, and let people make their own judgments. The day before Julian was supposed to move into his new apartment, he showed up at my door. He looked exhausted and defeated. Mom, can we talk? Really talk without lawyers and threats and all this conflict. I let him in. We sat in my living room, the room where this had all started 3 months ago. Mom, I've been thinking about everything you said, and you're right. We did make plans without asking you first. We assumed you'd agree, and we didn't consider that you might have your own opinions about your house. Thank you for acknowledging that. But Mom, we really are desperate. We're moving into a 1-bedroom apartment tomorrow. Emma and Jaden will have to share the bedroom, and Raina and I will sleep on a pull-out couch in the living room. We'll be crammed into 650 square feet. It's all we can afford now. Julian, I'm sorry that's your situation, but it's a situation you created. I know we overspent. I know we made bad financial choices. Mom, you're right about all of it, but I'm asking you now honestly, without the plans and the manipulation, would you consider letting us stay here, just temporarily? 6 months. We'll pay you $1,000 a month. We'll follow whatever rules you set. We'll work on our finances and save to move into something better. Please, Mom, I'm asking, not demanding. I'm acknowledging I was wrong. Can we please work something out? I looked at my son. He seemed genuinely contrite. And part of me wanted to help, wanted to save my grandchildren from living in cramped conditions, wanted to ease my son's struggle. But I also remembered the contractors sent without permission, the false APS report, the children coached to guilt me, the lies told to family members, the 3 months of manipulation and coercion. Julian, I appreciate that you're finally approaching this honestly, but I need to think about whether I can trust you in my home after everything that's happened. You didn't just make a mistake. You engaged in a sustained campaign of manipulation. You sent people to question my neighbors about my competence. You filed a false report with Adult Protective Services. You used your children as emotional weapons. Julian, that's not behavior that rebuilds trust quickly. I was desperate, Mom. People do terrible things when they're desperate. Yes, they do, but desperation doesn't excuse those things. It explains them, but it doesn't make them okay. Julian, I need time to think, and I need to know, if I say no again, will you accept it, or will this escalate further? If you say no, I'll accept it. We'll figure something out. I can't keep fighting you, Mom. It's destroying our relationship. My home became a group decision overnight when Julian made plans without my input. And now, after 3 months of conflict, he was finally asking instead of demanding. But the question remained, could I trust him after everything he'd done? Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Julian left that evening with my promise to think about his request. After he was gone, I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking about what to do. Part of me wanted to help. Julian was my son. Emma and Jaden were my grandchildren. The idea of them living in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment while I had space here bothered me. But another part of me, the part that had spent 38 years defending property rights and understanding boundaries, knew that giving in now would set a terrible precedent. It would teach Julian that manipulation and coercion eventually work if you just keep pushing. It would reward the false APS report, the coached children, the unauthorized contractors. I called Victoria Hammond. Julian came by tonight. He apologized, sort of, and asked if they could move in temporarily. 6 months, $1,000 a month rent following my rules. He seemed genuinely contrite. What should I do? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Delilah, only you can make that decision. But I'll tell you what I tell all my clients in these situations. Trust is like a vase. Once it's broken, you can glue it back together, but it will never be the same. It will always have cracks, always be fragile. If you let Julian move in after everything he's done, you need to ask yourself, can you trust him in your home? Can you trust that he'll respect your boundaries? Can you trust that he won't try to take over again? I don't know. Then that's your answer. You're not ready. And Delilah, being not ready is a perfectly valid reason to say no. That night, I made a list. On one side, reasons to let Julian move in. On the other, reasons to say no. Reasons to say yes. He's my son, and I love him. The grandchildren would be more comfortable here. He apologized and asked properly this time. 6 months is temporary and manageable. Family should help family. Reasons to say no. He made plans without my permission. He hired contractors without authorization. He filed a false APS report. He used his children to manipulate me. He spread lies to family members. He questioned neighbors to build a case against me. Trust is broken, setting a precedent that manipulation eventually works. My home, my boundaries, my right to say no. The no list was longer and more compelling. The next morning, I called Julian. I've thought about your request. My answer is no. Mom, I apologized. I approached you honestly this time. What more do you want? I want to trust you, and I can't. Not after everything that's happened. Julian, you didn't just make one mistake. You engaged in a months-long campaign of manipulation, lies, and attempts to undermine my competence. An apology doesn't erase that. Trust takes time to rebuild, and it can't be rebuilt while you're living in my house where I'd be constantly wondering if you're respecting my boundaries or plotting your next move. So what am I supposed to do? We're moving into that tiny apartment today. The kids are going to be miserable. Then you'll be motivated to improve your financial situation so you can move somewhere better. Julian, I'm willing to help you in other ways. I'll help you create a realistic budget. I'll connect you with a financial counselor. If you have a genuine emergency, medical bills, urgent repairs, I'll consider helping financially. But I'm not letting you move into my home. This is unbelievable. I finally did what you asked. I apologized, I asked properly, and you still say no. Because the apology doesn't undo the damage. Julian, you filed a false report with Adult Protective Services. Do you understand how serious that is? You tried to have me declared incompetent so you could take control of my property. That's elder abuse. An apology doesn't make me suddenly trust you again. Julian's voice turned cold. Fine, but don't expect a relationship with us or the kids. If you're choosing your house over your family, then you can enjoy your house alone. We're done. He hung up, and I sat there with a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, guilt, and a strange sense of peace. I'd defended my boundaries. I'd protected my property rights. I'd refused to reward manipulation. But I'd also potentially lost my relationship with my son and grandchildren. 2 weeks went by with no contact from Julian. I called once to check on them, but he didn't answer and didn't call back. Then I received a message from Raina. The kids are asking about you. If you want to see them, you can visit us at our apartment, but we're not coming to your house anymore. It was a power play, making me come to them on their territory under their conditions. But I also missed Emma and Jaden, so I agreed to visit. The apartment was as small as Julian had described. 1 bedroom, a tiny living area, a galley kitchen. Emma and Jaden's bunk beds dominated the bedroom. Julian and Raina's pull-out couch took up most of the living room. It was cramped and clearly uncomfortable, and I felt a wave of guilt seeing my grandchildren living there while I had space at home. But then I noticed something. The apartment had a new large TV, 65 inches at least, expensive. There were new gaming systems for the kids, designer coffee on the counter, the expensive kind. Julian, is that a new TV? We needed something for the kids to do in this small space. They're cooped up here. They needed entertainment. That TV costs at least $2,000. You could have gotten a smaller one for $400 and saved $1,600. Mom, don't start. But I couldn't help it. You're living in a one-bedroom apartment claiming you're in desperate financial straits, but you're buying expensive TVs and designer coffee. Julian, this is exactly the problem. You don't have a money shortage, you have a priority problem. We're trying to make the best of a bad situation. No, you're making the same bad choices that created the situation. Julian, you said you were working on your finances. This isn't working on finances. This is continuing to spend money you don't have. Raina jumped in. We wouldn't have to worry about money if you'd let us live in your house rent-free, but you cared more about having empty rooms than helping us. You asked to pay $1,000 a month, not to live rent-free. And that $2,000 TV? That's 2 months of the rent you said you'd pay me. If you can afford a $2,000 TV, you can save that money for a better apartment. The visit ended badly, and I left knowing I'd made the right decision. Julian and Raina weren't in financial trouble because of circumstances beyond their control. They were in trouble because they kept making poor choices and expecting others to bail them out. Over the next month, I heard through family members that Julian and Raina were telling people I'd abandoned them, that I'd chosen material possessions over family, that I was a cruel grandmother who didn't care about her grandchildren's living conditions. Some people believed them. Others, who knew the full story, didn't. But I also started hearing something else. Julian's business was in serious trouble, not just struggling, but facing potential bankruptcy. The debt was worse than I'd known. Over $120,000 now, with creditors threatening legal action. My sister Opal called. Delilah, I heard about Julian's business. It's bad. He might lose everything. Are you sure you won't reconsider helping them? Opal, I offered to help with budgeting and financial counseling. I offered to assist with genuine emergencies. What I won't do is let them move into my house, where they'll continue the same spending patterns that created this mess. Julian needs to face consequences and make real changes. My enabling him won't help. It'll just delay the inevitable. You sound so cold. I'm not cold, I'm boundaried. There's a difference. 3 months after Julian moved into the cramped apartment, something unexpected happened. I received a letter, handwritten, several pages long. Mom, we've been in this apartment for 3 months now. It's been the hardest 3 months of our lives. The kids hate it. Raina and I are constantly stressed. We're on top of each other all the time with no space or privacy. But something happened that I need to tell you about. Last month, we hit rock bottom financially. We couldn't make our car payment, couldn't pay utilities. We were days away from having our power shut off. And we had no one to bail us out. You'd said no. Raina's parents have their own financial problems. We were truly on our own for the first time. Raina and I had a choice, declare bankruptcy or make drastic changes. We chose changes. We sold the boat, got $18,000 for it, used that to pay off the car loan and our most urgent debts. We sold the expensive TV and gaming systems, used that money to pay utilities and buy groceries for the month. I took a second job, night shift warehouse work, 4 nights a week. It's exhausting, but it brings in an extra $1,800 a month. Raina started freelance marketing work in the evenings, another $1,000 a month. We cut every unnecessary expense. No eating out, no expensive coffee, no vacations. We created a strict budget and we're sticking to it. Mom, for the first time in years, we're actually addressing our debt instead of just making minimum payments. We're living below our means. We're making sacrifices. And I realized something. You were right about everything. We did make terrible financial choices. We did live beyond our means. We did expect you to bail us out instead of facing our own problems. When you said no, When you held firm even when we tried every manipulation tactic we could think of, you forced us to finally take responsibility. And as much as I hated you for it at the time, you did the right thing. If you'd let us move in, we would have continued our spending patterns while living rent-free. We would have blamed you for our stress. If you'd just let us have the master bedroom. If you'd help with groceries, we wouldn't have changed. But living in this cramped apartment with no one to rescue us, we had to change. We had no other choice. We still have a long way to go. We're still in significant debt. We're still living in a too-small apartment. But for the first time, we're actually moving in the right direction instead of just sinking deeper. I'm writing because I need to say, I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. Not sorry because I want something from you. Sorry because I understand what I did wrong. I tried to take control of your house without your permission. I manipulated you, lied about you, used my children to guilt you, and filed a false government report about you. Mom, that's unforgivable. I understand if you never want a relationship with me again. But I want you to know, you were right to say no. You were right to protect your boundaries. You were right that I needed to face consequences instead of being rescued. I don't know if we'll ever repair our relationship, but I needed you to know that I finally understand. Thank you for loving me enough to say no. Julian. I read the letter 3 times, tears running down my face. It was the first time Julian had taken genuine responsibility without excuses or qualifications. The first time he'd acknowledged that my no was actually helping him, not hurting him. I waited a week before responding. I wanted to make sure my reply was thoughtful, not just emotional. Finally, I wrote back. Julian, thank you for your letter. It means more than you know to hear you take responsibility and acknowledge what you did. I'm proud of you for making difficult changes. Selling the boat, taking a second job, creating a budget, these are hard choices that show real growth. You're right that if I'd let you move in, you wouldn't have changed. You would have had the same spending patterns in a more comfortable environment. The pressure of the cramped apartment and the lack of bailout options forced you to face reality. That's painful, but it's also necessary. I'm not ready to have you move back into my life fully. The trust is still damaged, and rebuilding it will take time. Months or years of you demonstrating changed behavior, not just changed words. But I am willing to start rebuilding. Slowly, carefully. If you want, we can have dinner once a month. Neutral location, a restaurant or park, not my house or your apartment. We can talk, reconnect. Let the kids see their grandmother. No discussions of money, housing, or past conflicts. Just being family in a boundaried way. If you continue the financial changes you've started, if you continue taking responsibility instead of blaming others, if you show consistent growth over time, maybe eventually we can have a closer relationship. But that relationship will never include me bailing you out financially or letting you live in my house. Those boundaries are permanent. I love you, but I also love myself and my right to control my own property and life. I hope you understand. Mom. Julian and I started having monthly dinners. At first they were awkward, both of us careful about what we said, avoiding conflict topics. But gradually, we found a rhythm. He'd tell me about his jobs, his budget progress, his debt reduction. I'd share about my activities, my volunteer work, my life. Emma and Jaden seemed happier after a few months. They'd adjusted to the apartment, made friends in the complex, learned to appreciate what they had instead of focusing on what they didn't have. 6 months after that first letter, Julian told me something that surprised me. Mom, we're actually glad you said no now. I know that sounds weird, but living in that cramped apartment forced us to change in ways we never would have otherwise. It's been hard, but it's also been good. A year after the crisis, Julian and Raina moved into a better apartment. 2 bedrooms, more space, still affordable on their improved budget. They'd paid off $40,000 in debt. Julian was talking about eventually buying a house, a modest one they could actually afford. He'd learned what I couldn't teach him while rescuing him. That facing consequences leads to growth. That living within your means brings peace. and that sometimes the most loving thing someone can do is say no. Now, at 77, I still live in my house. The house Julian tried to turn into a group decision. The house I defended by setting boundaries, seeking legal protection, and refusing to reward manipulation. Every room is still mine. My study, my craft room, my guest room, all exactly as I want them. My garage unconverted, my space unclaimed by others. I see Julian, Raina, and the grandchildren regularly now. We have a relationship, not the one Julian wanted, where he lives in my house and I subsidize his lifestyle, but a healthier one where we're all equals with mutual respect. I volunteer now with an organization that helps elderly people protect themselves from family financial exploitation. I share my story at community centers and senior groups. My home became a group decision overnight, I tell audiences. My son made plans for my house, talked to contractors, designed room layouts, gave notice at his rental, all without asking me. When he finally told me, it was presented as a done deal, not a request. He thought I'd agree because saying no would make me look like a bad mother and grandmother. I always pause there, letting people absorb it. But I said no anyway. I defended my property rights. I got legal protection. I refused to let guilt override my boundaries, and my son is better off today because I said no. He learned to face his problems instead of expecting others to solve them. He learned to live within his means. He learned that love doesn't mean surrendering your autonomy. People always ask, but weren't you tempted to give in? Didn't you feel guilty? Every day, I felt terrible seeing my grandchildren in that cramped apartment. I felt like a cruel grandmother choosing an empty house over family. But I also knew that giving in would harm Julian more than helping him. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold firm when someone tries to cross your boundaries. My home became a group decision overnight when Julian made plans without my input. But I took it back, not through anger or conflict, but through the same principles I'd defended in 38 years as a city planner. Property rights matter, ownership brings decision-making authority, and no one has the right to make plans for property that isn't theirs. Julian thought being family gave him rights to my house. He learned that being family means respecting boundaries, asking instead of demanding, and accepting no with grace. My house is still mine. My decisions are still mine. My life is still mine. And my relationship with my son, though different than before, is healthier because it's built on respect instead of entitlement. My home became a group decision overnight, and I spent 3 months taking that decision back, one boundary at a time, until it was mine again. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.